My parents used me to renovate their apartment just to sell it. So I walked away from their control. I'm 26. I was a young professional with a stable job in marketing, finally feeling like I was getting my footing in life after years of working my way up from entry-level positions. Growing up, our family dynamic was always slightly skewed. My parents ran a small grocery store that barely kept us afloat during the economic downturn of the late 90s. My brother Bart was their golden child, the one they pinned all their hopes on after they had to sell the family business. They pushed him toward entrepreneurship, convinced he would restore our family's financial standing. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the steady earner they never quite celebrated but always depended on. The moment I realized that everything had changed came when I received a simple phone call. It was from my parents, who had never really been very open with me about anything personal. I had been living on my own for the last few years, focused on my career and making my own decisions. My small but comfortable apartment in the city had served me well, but the hour-long commute was wearing me down. I spent more time on crowded buses and trains than I did at home, and after particularly exhausting weeks, I'd find myself scrolling through rental listings, dreaming of a place closer to work. That's when I went to my parents' house for what would turn out to be one of the most important family dinners of my life. Their modest two-story home hadn't changed much since my childhood. The same faded wallpaper, the same family photos showing Bart's achievements prominently displayed, the same worn furniture that told stories of better times when the family business was thriving. "How's work, honey?" my mom asked as she placed the steaming casserole dish on the table, the rich aroma of herbs and cheese filling the air. "Really good, actually," I said, smiling. "I'm looking for a new place to rent closer to work. The commute's killing me." The moment those words left my mouth, I noticed something shift in the atmosphere. My parents exchanged one of those loaded looks, the kind that only couples who have weathered financial storms together can perfect. My mom wiped her hands on her apron, the one she'd kept from the store days, and took a seat. "You know, honey," she began, her voice taking on that careful tone she used when trying to sell something to customers in the old days, "we might have a solution for you." I raised an eyebrow, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Remember Grandma Helen's old apartment, the one I inherited?" she asked, glancing at my dad for support. "Well, our tenants just moved out and the apartment's empty. It's only 5 minutes from your office. You could move in and you'd save so much on commuting. It's perfect." The apartment she mentioned wasn't just any property, it was the last piece of real estate our family owned after the store's closure. Grandma Helen had been the family matriarch, a shrewd businesswoman who had helped my parents start their grocery store. When she passed, she left the apartment to my mother, hoping it would provide some financial security for the family. I had spent countless weekends there as a child, watching Grandma Helen bake cookies and tell stories about her own struggles building a life in America. The place was charming and cozy, 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, and large windows that let in the morning sun. It was in a quiet neighborhood, just far enough from the bustle of the city but close enough to get anywhere quickly. But then my mom mentioned the rent, and everything shifted. "It would only cost you about half of what you're paying now, with a family discount, of course," she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way my dad suddenly became interested in his newspaper again, avoiding eye contact. The slight tremor in my mom's voice as she laid out the details. But I was so excited about the prospect of cutting my commute and saving money that I agreed without hesitation. As soon as I did, the conversation pivoted sharply. My dad lowered his newspaper and said, "That's settled then. Now, did you hear about your brother, Bart? He just landed 3 new clients for his courier business. He's really making it big in the delivery business." I nodded absently, already planning how I would decorate the apartment. I didn't think much about how quickly they changed the subject to Bart's success, though it was a familiar pattern. Ever since the store closed, my parents had pinned their hopes of financial recovery on him. They saw his courier business as their chance to reclaim their status as successful small business owners, even if only by proxy. When I arrived at Grandma Helen's apartment, reality hit hard. The place was nothing like my childhood memories. The walls were covered in old, peeling wallpaper, the same floral pattern Grandma had chosen decades ago. The floors creaked with every step, and the furniture looked like it hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. That night, sitting on the old, worn-out couch that still smelled faintly of Grandma's perfume, I called my mom. "Hey, I know you said the apartment needed a little fixing up, but I didn't realize it would be this much work. Can I renovate it?" Her response was distracted, probably more focused on the cooking show I could hear in the background. "Oh, sure, honey, just don't make it too bright. You know how I feel about those trendy neon colors everyone's using these days." What I didn't know then was that my parents had been struggling to find new tenants willing to pay market rate for such an outdated apartment. They needed someone to renovate it, but couldn't afford to do it themselves. I was their perfect solution, a tenant who would pay rent and improve the property at her own expense. I threw myself into the renovation project with enthusiasm, unaware that I was playing right into their plans. After work, I would come home and dive straight into the improvements. I'd strip old wallpaper, repaint walls, shop for new furniture, and try to make the apartment a place I could finally call home. 6 months and a significant portion of my savings later, it was finished. The walls were freshly painted in warm neutrals. The furniture was carefully chosen to blend comfort with style, and the space finally felt like mine. I was proud of what I had accomplished, excited to show my parents how I'd honored Grandma Helen's apartment while bringing it into the present. When my mom came to see the final result, her reaction seemed genuine. She inspected every corner, ran her fingers along the new kitchen countertops, admired the modern light fixtures, and marveled at the subtle patterns on the bedroom wallpaper. "Honey," she said finally, turning to face me, "this is remarkable." The praise felt wonderful, especially coming from someone who rarely offered it. For a moment, I felt like maybe things were changing, that maybe my parents were finally seeing me as more than just their reliable backup plan. But the truth came out a few weeks later at another family dinner. I had just received a promotion at work and was excited to share my news. However, as soon as I mentioned it, my parents exchanged another one of their looks. "Well, that's nice," my mom said, barely glancing up from her plate. "But did you hear about your brother? He just secured 3 new corporate clients. He's really making it big in his business." Then came the real reason for the dinner. Bart's courier business was struggling with increasing competition and mounting debts. The new clients weren't bringing in enough revenue to cover his expansive spending on unnecessary equipment and poorly planned expansion efforts. My parents had a solution, though. They wanted me to sell my apartment and invest the money in Bart's business. That's when everything clicked into place. The suspiciously low rent, their eagerness to have me renovate, their sudden interest in my living situation, it had all been part of a plan. They had needed someone to fix up the apartment so they could sell it at a higher price, and I had unknowingly volunteered for the job. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those months of work, all the money I'd invested, all the pride I'd felt in creating my own space, it had all been part of their scheme to help Bart. They had never intended for me to build a home there. They had just needed someone to increase the property's value. My father tried to justify it with talk of family loyalty and supporting each other. "Your brother has real potential," he insisted, the same way he used to talk about the store's potential even as it was failing. "He just needs a little help to get over this rough patch. This is what family does, we help each other." My mother's approach was more emotional. "Think about Grandma Helen," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "She always believed in supporting family. She would want you to help your brother." But I couldn't help but think about how Grandma Helen had also believed in honesty and hard work. She wouldn't have approved of this manipulation, of using one child to bail out another. In the end, I decided to move out of the apartment. Despite all the work I'd put into it, staying there felt like living in a monument to their manipulation. I found a small but modern apartment in a different neighborhood, one that had no family history weighing it down. The fallout was immediate and intense. My parents were furious, accusing me of being selfish and uncaring. Bart stopped speaking to me entirely. Even some extended family members who had been quietly watching the drama unfold took sides, mostly supporting my parents and brother, as family tradition dictated. But as painful as it was, standing my ground felt right. I had worked hard for everything I had, my job, my savings, the home I had created. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away, even if they were family. Over the following months, I learned more about my parents' financial situation through relatives who felt I had a right to know the truth. They had been counting on selling the apartment to pay off some of their own debts, most of which had accumulated from repeatedly bailing out Bart's failing business ventures. Their plan had been to use me to renovate the property, sell it for a profit, and solve everyone's financial problems, everyone's except mine, that is. The realization that my own parents had essentially tried to use me as free labor and an unwitting investor was difficult to process. It forced me to reevaluate every interaction, every family dinner, every seemingly innocent conversation about my future. Eventually, my relationship with my family became strained to the point of near silence. They never fully understood or accepted my decision to prioritize my own financial security over their plans. Holiday gatherings became awkward affairs filled with tense silences and pointed remarks about family loyalty. My parents sold Grandma Helen's apartment within months, capitalizing on all the renovations I'd done. The sale price was impressive, much higher than they'd expected thanks to my improvements. But even that windfall wasn't enough to save Bart's failing business or address their mounting debts. The money disappeared into the black hole of bad business decisions and desperate attempts to keep his courier company afloat. Bart's business failed anyway, just like my parents' grocery store before it. He moved to another state, leaving behind a trail of debts and broken promises. My parents had to face the harsh reality that selling their last piece of family property and betraying my trust in the process had been for nothing. As for me, I've built a new life in my own space. My career in marketing has flourished, and I've learned to set healthy boundaries with family members. I still think about Grandma Helen sometimes, especially when I pass by her old apartment building. I like to think she would be proud, not of the renovations I did to her apartment, but of how I stood up for myself when it mattered most. The experience taught me that sometimes the most important family lesson isn't about unconditional loyalty. It's about learning when to say no, even to the people you love most. It's about recognizing that true family support goes both ways and shouldn't come with hidden prices or ulterior motives. Today, my apartment stands as a testament to both what I've lost and what I've gained. While it cost me my family's approval, it gave me something far more valuable: the knowledge that I can stand on my own, that I can create something beautiful for myself, and that I don't need anyone else's validation to know my worth. The experience taught me that sometimes the most important family lesson isn't about unconditional loyalty. It's about learning when to say no, even to the people you love most. It's about recognizing that true family support goes both ways and shouldn't come with hidden prices or ulterior motives.